Um, and at this point, Outlook ROSCon, I just wanted to say that we have a lot of stuff planned. My colleague Jan Staschulat will have a workshop, like a real-time on real-time in ROS on the first, like on the workshop day. On the first day, I have a talk with Ralf about the licensing stuff I did. So, like a little tool that basically compares the open source scan of a ROS package with the package XML, which is not so relevant here. But on the second day, I think the 20th, I have a talk where I will present this deliberation working group again at ROSCon and also present these little behavior tree tools that I made. Yeah, and then Sebastian commented that it would be maybe a good idea to meet there. I've now submitted one of these birds, I don't know, birds without feather, whatever, about a session. Which would I submitted at starting point, kind of the start of this coffee break, because this is my talk, and kind of I submitted to start the session hour here, so we could theoretically meet before my talk in this coffee break in this room, and it's kind of the talk would be I think in this room, and this Birds of the Feather session would be in this room, so I think this would work. I think it will be announced in this little table, and I probably will also send an email around for everyone that's not here today. When I have it, it would collide a little bit with Steve's one here. In terms of timescale, I don't know how they will resolve that. We will see, and yeah, I will let you know. Who's going to be at ROSCon?
Me.
I will be there too.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Me.
Yeah, I assume that a couple of people will be there, and then we can just meet face to face. I hope that we can also get some more people from the US that are interested, because so far it's pretty European affair, and we and we set it on 5 p.m. with a purpose, right? So yeah, let's see how this goes. But yeah, thanks for the suggestion. I think that's a good idea to meet.
Yeah.
And also I wanted to have and also I think generally the program looked very good actually. I mean I was going through all when I made this awesome list in the working group organization. I went through all the old ROSCons and had a look, and there weren't too many talks on these kind of deliberation topics. But if you look into in this purple column here, there's this one, yeah, we talked about it, but then there's obviously a FlexB one, which is super interesting. Then there's gyros, which we had on this in this working group as well. There is something about PetriNets, which is interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
And then there's there's something for airports. I don't know, but yeah, as I said, super interesting. And so then we can add a lot of new talks to this list in to the awesome list. Then the second point, I don't know if you've seen this on LinkedIn. There's this JdeRobot, which seems to be a company. They have made also some kind of library. Has anyone had a close look?
It's not really a company. It's a research group. It's in my university.
Okay.
It's in my university, and they have a summer of code, and they have a organization company called Unibotics. But as until 2 years ago, they were ROS haters, and we are not. I think more or less they redo things that are existing, and the stability and the quality of the software is not very good. So I think it's not a good direction.
Okay.
Sorry if I may ask something about this. I looked at the repo and saw that
there is an issue saying that documentation is needed. Is there any hope that documentation will be published like sometime in the future?
I think this documented in the Unibotics because Unibotics is like a company's like a spin-off, a false spin-off of my university, and in the Unibotics I think there are documentation, but it's more focused to do exercises for kids and also for grade, but so the documentation is not bad to follow the exercises. The thing that is bad is the implementation, the platform. Here in the university, we have a lot of problems with that. The students are complaining all the day because the stability of the system, because it includes a simulation in the web, but we have a lot of problem with that in the university. So that's why I say that I think it's a wrong direction.
Thank you very much.
And do you know what their motivation was? Is there anything? What was needed? Why did they think it was necessary to have another behavior tree implementation?
It was repeated another?
Like why was this implementation necessary? I mean, what was their goal?
I think it's implemented in Python.
Yeah, so I looked at this repo. I haven't used it myself, but it's actually not a new implementation. It's a weird hybrid of the two major libraries. So basically, if you guys know that there's BehaviorTree.cpp, where you define an XML file, and that gets registered as C++ nodes, and then there's pipe trees. This repo takes a behavior tree XML and parses it and generates pipe trees code, as well as it also, I think, auto-generates a ROS2 package. So it's just like a bunch of abstraction to use the same XML description for a Python-based project. David is not here because he's at a conference, but I know what he will say is that actually someone that we know recently put up a PR that has Python bindings for BehaviorTree.cpp. So something like that might be a more promising avenue to keep track of.
Yeah.
Okay.
That last encoded message, someone we know, is. Can you disclose who we know?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's it's someone that worked at Picnic until recently. So someone David and I know. Yeah. So he's a.
Oh,
he's a
I
software
see. So
engineer.
a former Picnic person has done some
Yeah.
open source work now. Okay, that's super
Exactly.
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sound cryptic about that. It's open source. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's this one. Yeah, I think I found it. 634. Kyle, is this right? Sebastian? Kyle Cesare.
Did you send that? Oh, Cal Cesare, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I seeing the chat?
No, I haven't seen it. I just found it.
Yeah.
I put it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Christian, you're sharing the Teams window. If you think it, there you go. Now you're sharing the other window.
Yep, that's the one. So it looks like the way that this is going is like instead of being in the main repo, there might be just a separate repo that contains the Python bindings, and they're still figuring that out. But it's a promising direction.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, then I mean that's a good point if David is not here, because I had a little chat with him about the next point, about this discussion about the potentials to standardize the stuff, and I'm not sure if I have his slides, but I think I took also sufficient notes. Let me quickly see if I have the right notes. Yeah, I think I can share my notes, and you should be able to follow what I discussed with Davide. But yeah, so let's first let me first share my thoughts on why we need this standardization. So motivation one would be first, if it's currently unclear that I think we know that what some of the control nodes do. This basically goes back to what Enrico shared with us, I think 2 meetings ago. The mapping between the node name and the concrete behavior in all cases is not clear, at least not clear within all the resources that there are, especially with the book. And the second one is this behavior on the halt signal. Like that is kind of it's implemented in the library, but it seems to be not defined anywhere formally. And the second thing I'm also interested in that we could maybe include into this standardization effort would be what do we expect from skills, or I use skills here as kind of everything that the behavior tree interacts with, everything that's architecturally beneath the behavior tree, how they should be implemented. And probably, especially if you think about some physical resource, like for example a robot, I think there may be some rules necessary that two actions don't share the same resource. These are kind of the two main motivations. This should mean motivation 2. Sorry, is there a comment?
I was going to make a comment or ask a question. So when you define skills, are you thinking of every possible leaf and every subtree? Is that under the category of skill? Or are you
Yeah,
defining skill differently?
I would say anything that is architecturally below the behavior tree. So everything that behavior tree calls, I would say here a skill is maybe the correct the term is maybe to be defined. But I
Yeah,
mean
okay.
anything that kind of the behavior tree interacts with, maybe we have to define certain rules. For example, I mean, a hard rule would be that there may not be two actions that interact with the same device. I mean, this would be a super hard rule, or that two actions could never interfere with each other. Then we would be safe, right? If you kind of
So the thing,
yeah
one thing I'll throw out there is with automated reasoning and formal verification, we could set up a verification goal that would say, can you verify that there's no possible way that two leafs that access the same resource can access it at the same time?
okay yeah
So
exactly
and we could formally verify that that could never occur, would be an example. So I don't think we need to be so restrictive, but it may add a layer of verification to ensure that we don't introduce a conflict that appears during runtime.
yeah I agree.
Right.
This would be an option. This actually ties into the next point, like kind of motivation. This should be motivation 2. The necessity for formal verification. So for formal verification, I mean, this standardization is a necessity for formal verification. So we need to define these things properly. Otherwise, we could not do the verification you talked about, unless we kind of modeled the complete library.
And if we can specify it correctly, then we can transpile it to formal verification tools and verify. Right. We don't need to double our work, which is good.
Yeah. And the second thing, we could also do more general static analysis. For example, having some kind of linter of an XML, of a behavior tree XML, that would do something like detection of deadlocks. I don't even know if you can have a deadlock in a behavior tree, but I'm sure there's a way. But stuff like that. For example, if you have a cascade of different sequence nodes, then this static analysis could suggest that you merge these into one sequence node. Things like that would be possible if we have formally defined what these actually do. Yeah. And then the suggested steps would be, or suggested content to be standardized would be this, that we define behavior tree control nodes, decorators, leaf nodes, and also this tick behavior. Just to say it roughly, Davide was actually proposing to have in the standard an actual implementation in Python or C++, so to have actual implementations in the standard, which I'm not sure if that's the right direction, but I can show you his stuff later, as I said. But one idea I liked, that it would be good if we had a definition that we could test against, that we could kind of use an implementation like BehaviorTrees.cpp or something else, or PyTree, and test this against whatever is standardized and make sure that kind of, again, it's a form of verification, verify that it actually follows the standard. This would be nice, and I don't really know a tool for that, or I don't really know how I would go about this, but or what this would imply for the actual standard itself. But yeah, just saying that this would be good. And further, yeah, then there's these guidelines I talked about, what actions and conditions would be. For example, one action or one guideline would be that we say a condition node must always return within a time that's a lot less than whatever the tick is, which is of course different depending on your tick frequency. But yeah, this is also something that you could, in a runtime system, monitor with some kind of watchdog. Just say every condition must always end within a certain time step, and then warn the user if that's not the case, maybe due to stress on the system, stuff like that. This would then also be something you could then, for example, have a behavior tree engine and put this in there, and then you could reference the standard and could say the standard said it is necessary, stuff like that. Yeah, and then that's the last slide is first steps. I actually created a, this organization in GitHub is already there for a longer time. This has this awesome list, but now it also has a fork of the rep repository, and there I created a rep 2018, and there's just some small boilerplate code in there, but please feel free to have a look. And I would suggest also, if you do anything with this standard, that we first internally refine it in our fork, and maybe we could even do internally pull requests and stuff if there are really bigger discussions coming up. And yeah, if you want to be part of the organization that's already there since last time, then please send me an email and I can add your user to this org. Any comments so far? Yes?
It all looks great. I have a kind of an odd comment, but I'll save it until everyone else gets their comments in.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do my odd comment. So, all right, so I don't know if anybody here has ever played with SysML, Systems Modeling Language, or is familiar with what OMG is doing around SysML version 2. It's a systems modeling language that it has formal semantics. It's currently in development and will launch mid next year. The reason I bring it up is they're wrestling with a lot of the same issues and topics. So behavioral diagrams, state maps, as well as all the physical modeling. And I can see a future where SysML v2 and ROS start to interoperate at some level. So it maybe should be just a footnote that it exists. Go ahead.
So sorry, SysML, I suppose it's some kind of modeling language.
Yeah, so Systems Modeling Language version 2 is what it's called. Systems Modeling Language was based off UML, Universal Modeling Language. That's the old way. The new way is the SysML version 2. There's a organization called Object Management Group that owns that specification, and it's coming next year. And it's top of mind because I was at the meeting last week. I was at the SysML v2 meeting working on formal verification of SysML v2. But it's like reachable branches of the behavior diagram and the state diagram and deadlock. Those issues were top of mind at the exact same time as we're talking about them here. So I don't think there's any action to be taken, but I think there should be a level of awareness that that is coming, and there may be interoperability down the road or things that we can leverage.
Jamie, does SysML in general have a standard language to express finite state machines, or is that something outside of the scope?
Yeah, so if we have, you can represent a state machine inside the language, so they can specify states, all the guards, everything. But the language itself does not execute the state machine or simulate the state machine. So tools like Cameo, part of the CATIA, Dassault products, PTC Systems Modeler, I think IBM Modeler is what they call it now. All of those tools would execute the SysML-v2 state machines.
Gotcha. Yeah, so the reason I bring that up is, first thing that comes to mind is to go along with the first requirement, which is basically the standardization of, like, if you define a behavior tree, you should be able to run it in, these 3 different libraries, whatever you kind of call it, and they should functionally behave the same, right? That means that there's probably an opportunity to have some source of truth where you have, kind of like a common language to define your tree. It gets generated to all these implementations, call it BehaviorTree CPP, PyTrees, and the Rust one, I forget, I think it's called Bonsai with an S. There's 2 extremes, right? One of them is to basically take the BehaviorTree CPP XML that already exists, and then we're just talking about the JdeRobot repo, right? They already have a converter from BehaviorTree XML to PyTrees. So do we start with something like that, where we have our like benchmarking repo starts with the XML, instantiates it in each library, and executes it, versus do you start with a SysML-like description of the behavior tree and you have translators for each of those libraries? And then there's a trade-off there between, like, how rigorous you want to be and how much you want to leverage what's already there implemented in the community. I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
good questions though.
It's always this question of, like, another language to rule another language, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, maybe let me briefly go over what I discussed with Davide. So yeah, he also had these slides. I will ask him to put them in the notes, and then yeah, he said that that it's good to have an implementation that we will conform on, and model things that are still not very well described, and then he said that he doesn't agree with the center column. Not sure in what way he exactly doesn't agree, but at least that's the motivation, right? We have to define it somehow.
Yeah, if you look at how PyTrees defines a sequence, like, I think their default is what Davide calls reactive sequence in his library or something like that. So I understand the need for something like this.
In this sense, then PyTrees would be at least conformative with the book, right? So, yeah. But yeah, then he was suggesting, for example, as an example.
I mean, it's not only about book and the papers. It's also, if someone comes from a background in computer game and behavior tree from a computer game, that's what they call sequence and fallbacks. So that's a bit what the reason why the original place, the sequence and the fallbacks were the one that were reactive. And also because it sounds like that they are the standard ones, and since the reactiveness of these control nodes are one of the main features of behavior trees, calling it like reactive feeds the sequence, like, I don't know, an alternative way, or I don't know, like a modified version of the original one. I mean, the thing that we need to be careful of what we choose as the standard nodes, like naming, like sequence on fallback, because it's what people will start trying working with, right? And if we have sequence and fallbacks without the memory, let's say with the memory, so the memory one, we are kind of ripping off, basically removing half of the advantages of behavior tree. That was the main reason behind that. But I totally agree that now, I mean, we have this huge misunderstanding, and every time I see a new library and I say, okay, now is this sequence or this fallback, is it with memory or without memory? I think the best is just to have no, let's say, default naming, like just saying sequence. I think it's what we proposed last time, right? Like reactive sequence and memory sequence, like in the first place. So we know, so at least the person reader says, okay, this sequence means that it's without the memory or is with the reactive. So we get rid of the default to just sequence. I think.
Yeah, this was also your suggestion, right? So to have kind of more
Yes.
qualified names.
Yes, that was the original idea, to use the most qualified version that it can be found in the literature. Unfortunately, there is a conflict with memory nodes because the term memory is used in two different ways. So I did not come up with I came up with a suggestion which I don't stand behind it because I think it's very bad. So I don't like what I proposed myself.
Okay.
And I think another issue with, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say it's just a suggestion, right? So, yeah.
And I think yet another level of confusion with memory nodes is that was the policy for resetting the memory of an internal node. I see different libraries use different policy to reset nodes. What if, I don't know, a fallback return a success, and the next tick should it, retry the same children, or should start over, all these kind of things, and this is also can introduce another level of confusion.
So yeah, okay, maybe this I can add this actually to the notes. Behavior on resetting of nodes. Good. Okay, but yeah, I mean this. I would really like if we could take this actual discussion in terms of content online in this rep already, because then it would be traceable. We would see who said what, and then we could use these meetings just to maybe recap a bit, maybe bring everyone on the same page. But I think it would be good to have this online, because then we have this concrete suggestions. And I mean, first we could discuss on the kind of mode of even how to do this, how to define, or what we actually need to define. And yeah, for example, I mean here when you look at the stuff Davide showed me, you can see that he suggested this peer review process as it seems to be implemented at Boost as well, but I'm not so sure whether this process would also work kind of for an initial suggestion. I think this process may be only designed to update something that is already there. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, this was what I talked about. These proposals must include reference implementations in one. It's either or. Okay, so it's one of those languages and 3 motivating examples. I think I like that, but again, it only really works if you want to change something. So if you want to suggest a change later, then I think it probably makes sense to give examples saying like, for example, in this use case, the sequence like that works better or stuff like that. So something along those lines. Yeah. Also, the unit tests and testing in general, I like a lot. I think that's good because this would also make it possible to, have some, I don't know, CI for your own fancy new behavior tree implementation or whatnot. Yeah.
The end-to-end test portion there would also serve I think, Christian, you mentioned the requirement to ensure that the tick of a node doesn't block for a long time and stays within roughly your tick rate of the tree. I mean, you could also very quickly check that with an integration test, where you basically, are forcing people to implement long-running actions as asynchronous stateful nodes.
Yeah.
So that would be great to enforce on a global community level, because so many people have like 5-second blocking nodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could even have some like tests that come with the library that you could then run on everyone that uses the library, kind of to make sure it complies with this, stuff like that. Yeah. Or even some kind of runtime monitor. We've had many colleagues that had problems with like just the behavior tree not actually running in the tick frequency that you put it in because it just took too long, which is always easy. Enrico?
Yes. So even if we enforce the tick to be the response of of actions to be fast enough from the tick, because during a tick cycle you can tick an arbitrarily large number of actions. I don't know if we can kind of deduce that the whole behavior tree execution of the tick will be within the tick time. I don't know if I kind of expressed what I want to say well. What I mean is, when you send a tick to a behavior tree, you don't necessarily tick just one action before returning to the root. You might have many actions to tick, and as the behavior tree grows, even if each action is quick, maybe you skip the next tick of the behavior tree.
True.
But wouldn't you also want to flag that to the user? Like if they have a parallel node with 200 children and it's overrunning, then that's probably an indicator that something should be refactored anyway, right?
Yeah, that's maybe a good point. This is also something you could statically analyze. You could see how many nodes would at maximum run, sort of the depth of the tree, but not really just the depth. How many, in the worst case, how many children could run in one tick, right? Yeah, this would be also like a static analysis thing. But just notice. Also, please feel free to add points to the
Jimmy, if you're talking, you're muted.
protocol.
I saw you were
Now you're
waving
muted
your
again.
hand.
Yeah, my headset was muted and Teams was muted, so I was double muted. I was just making a comment that just being able to have deterministic timing of getting back to some layer in the node, that could be a verification goal. It's just another example.
I see your question about flow state there as well. How that would impact this work? They have their own behavior tree implementation as far as I understand. So, and I can't imagine it's going to be open source. So it would just be something where we should reach out to Intrinsic and see if they want to participate, I think.
They should have representation at the meeting, right? So we may want to take an action to talk to them about it. Because when you think of things like defining terms, there may be value in using the same terms the same way, similar to the value of using the Unreal Engine terms would have added value, because you would have an ecosystem of documentation and users that already understood the terms. And I'm talking about the slide a couple slides ago where we're talking about what do we call sequence node,
Yeah.
right?
By the way, did they expose how the their BT look like? The intrinsic people, I mean?
They just have videos. I mean, they're like,
Okay.
I don't think you get access to any of their technology unless you get into one of their open beta or one of their beta programs. So unclear.
But
Yeah,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Looks like a little bit. Yeah.
yeah,
It's actually like
yeah.
It's a hybrid. So it's behavior trees with states on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically you could kind of implement these with just sequence nodes, right? And this looks kind of parallel to me, at least from the visual language.
Yeah. It looks like a task description. There was this. I've seen it this long time ago. I don't remember where.
Is this the ladder logic?
Yeah. Yeah, because it doesn't really look like the classic BT, let's say. It doesn't look like a tree. I mean, it looks like a flow chart with parallel.
Yeah.
Basically, Venn diagram.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, it's something. Go ahead, Christian. Sorry.
yeah, that's really all there is. It's hard to know any details.
Yeah, like at Picnic, we're working on a proprietary thing with BehaviorTrees as well, but we're directly using BehaviorTree.cpp, so we have the benefit of making it very easy for us to participate. I think for intrinsic, best we can do is just reach out to them.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So, do you have anyone in mind, Jamie, that we could? I mean, we could talk about like to Kat or to any one of the ROS people, but I don't know if they're necessarily the ones that also work on this. But I guess
I have a contact that I spoke with a few months ago. I can't recall the gentleman's name, but he was one of the people that was doing outreach around ROS. Industrial ROS is what he was working on. I can find his name and at least ask if he's going to be at the ROSCon event, and we can have a casual conversation. He was very receptive to talking, but when it got to the point where he put things up the flagpole to give access to people and include people in the beta, that was a little out of his hands. So I was denied. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. My understanding of flow state is that they're really trying to go after big industrial customers, or I don't know. I think the strategy is to basically have a small, well curated handful of people with a lot of money.
just to make sure everyone is aware that this is going online, right?
Huh? Oh yeah, that's fine. I
Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, I think their plan is like even in the press releases, right? I think it's a very valid strategy of picking
Yes,
very
of course.
engaged customers with these kind of extensive services. So.
And they were very, very pointed that their initial application is like the work cell application, right? It's the Southwest Research Industrial ROS use case that they've really focused on as a group, not mobile robotics, not other things.
Yeah. Cool.
Good. Yes. Yeah, have anyone an idea how would there be about some kind of language, some kind of form that we could define these kind of inner algorithms that the control nodes have, that is then also, first of all, readable in a kind of standard document, but then also executable in some formal way to make it comparable to the behavior of an actual implementation. Because what I don't really like about the approach of using an actual implementation in there is that it may be hard to read. I mean, maybe in Python we could come up with something that's also readable, but yeah, I would much rather like some kind of pseudocode language that is also executable, something like that.
Well, that's kind of what we're talking about with the XML versus the SysML implementation, right? I think what would be, in my opinion, what would maximize the chances of people contributing is if there were maybe a repo in the organization, in the ROS Deliberation Working Group organization, where, I don't know, let's say we pick one library now, it's something that can take a collection of XMLs that you keep in like a very central folder. These are your motivating examples. And then you have a runner that essentially instantiates the tree, ticks them, and defines expected behavior. So you basically have a script that you can just run as like a giant benchmark that iterates through, like a giant list of XMLs, let's say, and gives you a thumbs up or thumbs down. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, and maybe in the wrap document we could just parse the XMLs to trees, like to images of trees, something like that, because the XML itself is again not really readable. Yeah, but then but if you say we have an XML of a tree, this does not define the inner workings of the tree, right? The inner workings of the behavior of the condition nodes and so on.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately with any library, you need an implementation of an action, right? Like, I think we probably also need to standardize on that. Like, if you think of common examples, right? There's actions that, are single tick actions that do something very specific, like, this thing is a success, like is an always success node, so it just ticks once and returns success. You might have things that take like a fixed number of time to complete. You might have things that have a probability of completing, or you might have things that just take, some range of time as like an asynchronous task. So I think having these like dummy implementations where you say, oh, if I have an action, that takes 3 ticks to complete and I put it in sequence with 2 of itself, then the sequence must complete in 6 ticks, and that's like your test case, right? So something of that sort. And then each library author or whoever does it is responsible for also providing the implementations of the actions per the standard.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but this would again be pretty close to also BehaviorTree.cpp, because this is the only library that uses the XML. So I don't know if this would help a lot with other implementations.
Right. So that was my original question, right? Like, there's the option of sticking with the XML because you get the BehaviorTree.cpp for free, and you can make translators for the other libraries, or do you pick a new standard and force everyone to develop their conversion? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, we could also just define the interface to ROS, so define how a behavior tree action is translated or is communicating with a ROS action. And then we could, on the ROS side, define kind of even with timing, how often the action must be ticked before it returns failure or something like that, some test case in this way. And then you could plug any behavior tree engine, or even, for that matter, another one. Yeah, no. What do you think, Enrico, in terms of verifying the actual inner workings of a control node?
So I think there is some way to formally define the working of a control node. It was done by within the context of the scope project, at least for some nodes, but I think not including the halting mechanism. And I think Michele might remember something about that. So if we want to go fully formal, there might be ways. I don't know how helpful that might be. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm not sure what to say about this.
And do you know what kind of language was it that scope defined it?
No, what I mean is it was a formal definition, as in on paper. in
Okay.
mathematical terms. The project, as an implementation, the project I think used BehaviorTree.cpp.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that it is possible to define behavior trees regardless, like independently from an implementation, even though it requires using some mathematical tooling that might not be very intuitive. One might say that pseudocode is way more intuitive than that. So depending on how, where we want to, which balance we decide to strike between formalism and intuitivity, like uh, intuitivity, then we might prefer one thing or another.
Hmm.
Yeah, I also agree. I think pseudocode in this case is probably better. Also because, I mean, the reason why in scope and in general when we use this formal language is that then we have a way to, for instance, in, um, in scope what we also had is that we had the formal language, and from a formal language we could easily define runtime monitors that is basically making sure that a model is satisfying that language, kind of things. But I don't think we need that in this case. So as long as we is just saying probability.cpp is already our runtime monitor, meaning that if a library is not behaving as the BehaviorTree.cpp or whatever other library we take for as a standard, we already have some benchmarking for that, right? So I wouldn't go defining a formal definition for BT to have benchmarking of unit tests when we already have a benchmarking, let's say, provider.
Do you know who I could approach from Scope that could tell me a bit more about that?
Who what? Sorry.
Who could I contact from the Scope project that worked on these formal
Uh,
definitions?
uh, Armando. Armando.
Okay.
Yeah, Armando worked on the definition part. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, okay. I see. Then I assume it's very formal, but not super executable. Okay.
So a different proposal might be to underspecify our behavior by giving example example behavior trees and the traces of all the actions they are ticking that they are supposed to tick, and say that an implementation is supposed to precisely reproduce this sequence of ticking from the actions. And this, of course, is not a specification because it doesn't cover all possible trees, but we might say that we use these as a kind of collection of edge cases, and if a new edge case arises, we kind of discuss it as they come.
So you mean, yeah, but this would again be more of a sort of black box test. You would test the nodes from the outside. The one that has a pseudocode definition is more of a, I don't know, more of a, gives more insight.
Sure, absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, in the end, for testing, we would do actually the same thing. We would have some formal definition and then also just compare kind of what is the output, what is the tick sequence or something like this. Maybe even timing, but yeah, nothing else. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, but I guess these are some good comments. Again, please have a look at um, at the document, at the thing I prepared. I put it in. Let me put it also into the chat. The link to this this fork. Actually, we could even have a look at it together, and then I hope for your suggestions how to proceed. And we could of course also discuss this at ROSCon with everyone that's there. What I did so far, I basically just said, I just put me and Davide there because we were in this meeting. Feel free to add your name. I wrote a little blah blah abstract, and then this is basically the motivations that I also had on my slides just now. And then I have a proposal of a structure here to say that we first describe basic context of execution, then we describe control nodes, leave nodes, decorators, and then we describe requirements for underlying nodes. So it's very bare bones, and feel free to suggest anything else. And then if you want to be part of this deliberation working group, I'm not quite sure. I mean, theoretically, if you are part of this, then I can give you the rights so that you can commit to this, or we can also just keep it with the regular pull request workflow. We can see, but if you prefer to work on this directly, then I can also give you the access, and then you can commit directly to this repository. Maybe I will ban forced pushes. Okay. Thanks for the productive meeting so far. Are there any other comments from your side? Good. Then see some of you in New Orleans. I always think it should be called New Orleans, but maybe it's not going to stick. Okay.
If it's in the US, it must be pronounced wrong. It's the rule.
No, I think the US way would be New Orleans or something like that, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice week.
Hi. Thank you.